From the National Weather Service in Raleigh, it's Nick Petro with your Thursday briefing for Central North Carolina. Although this is a routine briefing, this really isn't a routine weather scenario that we have going on right now. As you can see on the screen I'm showing, the red, that is flash flood warning. So all of Central North Carolina is under a flash flood warning. Doesn't mean that flash flooding is going to occur everywhere you see red. It just means that flash flooding is imminent in low spots where there's streams, creeks, dips in the road, anywhere that water normally collects or flows through. Water will be elevated, and certainly flash flooding is a concern. So the number one rule is turn around and never drive through areas where water covers the road. Most flash flood deaths occur in automobiles. Real quick, I just want to show what the heck is going on, folks might be wondering. And essentially what we have got going on, let me turn off the warnings here. But obviously some of the questions that have come up is this, is this the hurricane? Is this Ada? Well, Ada's down here over northeast Florida. So clearly we are well detached from that. But what you'll see is a boundary. Notice the numbers I have on here are temperatures. And look how it's cooler out over the Ohio Valley and west of the mountains. It's warmer east. So we have a cold front that's stretching across the area and will be pushing across our area. So it's this cold front. But the one thing that is different is because of the flow around Ada, and remember, around low pressure, the wind blows counterclockwise. So there is a stream of very moist air being pumped up across the southeast U.S. around the flow of Ada. So so when this moist air comes pumped up, gets pumped up to the north and interacts with this cold front, that's what sets the stage for the heavy rain. So, I guess indirectly, Ada's playing into our weather by pushing a lot of moisture ahead of it up across the Carolinas and over that boundary, which is setting the stage for the heavy rain. But Ada itself, the center, will stay well to our south and east. So that's what's going on. The setup, as I pointed out here, all of central North Carolina is under a flash flood warning, at least for the next few hours. So let me just go ahead and jump to our slides here. This briefing covers the period today through basically next Wednesday. And just real quick, the upcoming weather pattern, because I want to get into more details of the flooding threat here. But basically, we've got this boundary that's moving across the Carolinas. Ada is basically over the northeast Florida. They're moving off to the northeast, and all of that will push to the east as we head through Friday into Saturday, and behind that will be high pressure. Remember in the satellite image I showed just a short time ago, it was cooler and clear back over the Ohio Valley and west of the mountains, and that clear and cooler air mass is headed our way for the weekend. And we will have another secondary front push across early next week, but that really isn't expected to generate much, if any, rain across our area. That front may, in fact, just come through dry. And then we get another area of high pressure. So the key points here, obviously, we have wet weather today with the moderate risk for flash flooding. Numerous flash flood warnings are now in effect. But once that rain exits this evening, the main hazard after that will be main stem river flooding because of all this rain that's falling now. So nearly all the main stem rivers in central North Carolina will experience some form of river flooding through Friday, which will perhaps linger into Saturday, depending on how quickly that river flooding moves downstream. But other than that, really the good news is dry weather will return on Friday, and the weather will remain dry through the rest of the next 6-7 days. So let's get this rain out of here. Unfortunately, we are going to have to deal with some river flooding through tomorrow, but then obviously after that, it'll be cooler and real nice weather to kind of for the cleanup stage of all that mess. So anyway, hang in there for another day or so, and I promise you some much better weather as we head through the weekend into early next week. Okay, and here's a way to look at the rainfall that we're expecting. And when you add it all up, 3 to 5 inches of rain is probably the type of amounts that we're going to see widespread across the area. Let's get that rain out of here, and then Friday, that rain you see there painted on Fridays for early in the day, maybe even before sunrise, and then we'll get that out of here. And then the weekend is dry into early next week. So looking at some real nice weather once we get rid of today's weather system. I wanted to point out too that while flooding is the primary hazard with today's weather event, we can't rule out the risk for a isolated severe thunderstorm, mainly south and to the east of Raleigh. And what I mean by severe thunderstorm, I mean, a straight line damaging wind gust. You can't rule out an isolated tornado, but mainly damaging wind gusts are possible. Now, that's a level 1 on a scale of 0 to 5. So the threat level on a scale of 0 to 5, we're at level 1 risk. So it's not really that great of a risk, and it would be very isolated if there were any instances of damaging winds. Okay, and then obviously better weather, as I pointed out, for Friday into the weekend. This is the Weather Prediction Center excessive rainfall outlook, which just, again, is another way to demonstrate which areas have the greatest risk for flash flooding. Okay, so pretty much all of central and eastern North Carolina. Numerous flash floods are likely today. All of central North Carolina is under a flash flood warning. Okay, so just remember, any place that water collects, any stream, any low spot, any place that's prone to flooding when it rains hard will probably flood at some point if it hasn't already. So obviously that's really important for commuters, folks who are, out and about today. Really folks need to pay real close attention and make sure you don't drive into areas where water covers the road. All right, so this rain is going to find its way into the river system. So I'm going to take you through each main stem river across central North Carolina, starting at west, and we'll work our way east. So starting west across the Yadkin River Basin, the river in all these forecasts are courtesy of National Weather Service's River Forecast Center, and they are modeling the rain that's fallen and additional rain expected, and that would suggest rain or river reaching almost major flood stage on the Yadkin at Yadkin College. It's already in flood stage. It's at 20.27 feet, possibly cresting at nearly 29 feet, close to 29 feet there late Friday into early Saturday. And then as we head south to the Rocky River, that one right now is not quite following the forecast. This river, I will point out, is pretty, it reacts very quickly. So just because it's not flooding now doesn't mean, it won't happen. It just, this river is a little bit more flashy. It means it develops real quick and it ends real quick. So definitely we'll be keeping our eyes on that. Looking further east across the, heading into the Cape Fear Basin, the Haw River is rising pretty rapidly at Haw River, and it's forecast to touch major flood stage there on tonight, really, into Friday morning, and then quickly come down during the daytime Friday. Further downstream near Biden, that crest is going to be delayed a little bit, but still reaching major flood stage at Bynum, 17.1 feet. So I know that there's a lot of roads near Bynum that flood during when the river comes out of its banks. Unfortunately, that looks like that's going to be the case here as we head into Friday. The Deep River is turned a corner and it's on its way up. Is expected to reach minor flood stage. And then as we head towards the Neuse, the Clayton, Smithfield, Goldsboro, the gauges there are all pointing upward. In some cases, pretty steep rises. We already have flooding occurring at Smithfield, which is actually downstream of Clayton, which is unusual. So that tells you how much rain has fallen right there near Smithfield, that the local contributions are already resulting in flooding at Smithfield. But Clayton is expected to hit major, so is Smithfield, and so is Goldsboro. And Goldsboro, it takes a while to get down there, and it takes a while to get out of there because of the twisty and windy nature of that river. So look for major flooding on the Neuse River here as we go through the daytime Friday and even into Saturday and the weekend downstream, as I'm noted there in Goldsboro. On the Tar River at Lewisburg is expected to it's running a little bit ahead of the forecast, so we may need to go ahead and update that. At Rocky Mount is expected to crest just barely below major flood stage. Remember the record's at 31.7, so nowhere near records, but still approaching major flood stage at Rocky Mount, and that will occur later tonight into early Friday. And further downstream at Tarboro, major flood stage is at 32, and we have it cresting just below major there during the morning hours on Saturday. So again, if for our folks on the Tar River, obviously you've experienced flooding before, so definitely compare these numbers to prior flooding to get a sense of the impacts. Further north on the Roanoke, that's controlled largely by the dam system. So the flooding isn't as bad thanks to some of the controls that are in place on that river. And then the Fishing Creek near Enfield is expected to approach moderate. So point is, nearly all the rivers are going to be in some form of flooding. Now, as we head further south to the Cape Fear Basin, Lillington is fortunately, it hasn't been raining as hard across the southern coastal plain and sandhills. So that's why these rivers are a little bit below what is forecast right now. But nevertheless, we are expecting at least minor flooding on the Cape Fear River. Again, nothing even nearly close to records. So don't worry about this being like what we saw with some of the prior Dennis or Florence. Nevertheless, we got to keep our eyes on it, and minor flooding is expected there on the Cape Fear. Now, Manchester is getting a little bit more contributions from further upstream, but there is an expectation that it could get into moderate flooding there at Manchester, so we'll definitely be keeping our eyes on that. Clearly, the blue line represents what's actually happening versus the purple and red, which shows the forecast. So obviously some tweaks may be needed on that as well. The good news is, as I pointed out earlier in a quick look at radar, you can see that while some heavy rain has moved across the sandhills and southern coastal plain, prior to this, that area has been more on the drier side compared to places further north and west. I will point out, I'd be remiss if I left off a slide about the tropics. Obviously, Eta, as I pointed out, the flow around Eta has been sort of what's been pumping all that tropical moisture up and over this boundary, which has given us the rain. But the actual center of Eta is forecast to remain off the Carolina coast as we head into the morning hours tomorrow, and by tomorrow evening it'll be long gone. And then in case you're curious, Theta out in the eastern Atlantic is not going to be a problem for us. It's going to stay to the east. And then finally there's an area of disturbed weather over the central Caribbean, and that's got a pretty high chance, 80 to 90% of formation over the next 5 days. So this busy hurricane season continues. All right. Finally, let's go ahead and look at the Climate Prediction Center outlook for next week, the latter half of next week into the following weekend. So not this upcoming weekend, but the following weekend. And that looks like above normal temps and below normal precipitation. So that's good news. So again, as I pointed out earlier, once we get today's weather out of here, we should be going into a stretch of dry weather. All right, so that pretty much wraps it up. Wet weather today with risk for flash flooding continuing. There's pretty much all of central North Carolina is in a flash flood warning right now. The rain will exit this evening, but the risk for main stem river flooding will continue. Nearly all the main stem rivers in central North Carolina will experience some form of river flooding through Friday, perhaps lingering into Saturday. Dry weather will return on Friday and remain dry through the rest of the forecast period, and some cooler temps this weekend. Obviously, we need to just remind folks, I know everybody watching this knows this, but just please remind your constituents, your friends, your family, your coworkers, and those in your sphere of influence to never drive through areas where water is covering the road. And don't forget, there could be an isolated damaging wind gust with this system as it moves through.